Above all, don't lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to such a pass that he cannot distinguish the truth within him or around him, and so loses all respect for himself and for others. And having no respect, he ceases to love. You are alone after an argument, and the room has finally become quiet. Yet the argument continues. You replay it, not exactly as it happened, but as it can be endured. You remove the sentence in which you were cruel. You soften the contempt in your voice. You enlarge the wound inflicted by the other person and reduce your own provocation to a harmless remark. Soon the scene has acquired a cleaner shape. You were patient. You were cornered. You merely defended yourself. Nothing has been invented wholesale. Only a few details have been moved. But pride has already entered the editing room, and memory has begun serving a verdict. Self-deception rarely begins with a grand falsehood about the meaning of life. It begins with a small alteration made because the unaltered truth would cost us something. Perhaps it would expose envy beneath principle, possession beneath love, fear beneath indifference, or vanity beneath righteous anger. The first lie offers relief. The second protects the first. Then each new fact must be admitted, distorted, or driven away, according to whether it threatens the shelter we have built. A private sentence gradually becomes an inner authority. The question Dostoevsky places before us is how that authority can come to govern memory, perception, responsibility, and finally, the heart itself. The warning is not an isolated maxim delivered by Dostoevsky from the safety of a philosophical treatise. It is spoken inside a tense and almost comic scene in Book 2, Chapter 2 of the Brothers Karamazov, commonly titled The Old Buffoon in Constance Garnett's translation. Fyodor Pavlovich Karamazov has entered the monastery with relatives who hope elder Zosima might help settle a family dispute. Instead of meeting the gravity of the occasion, Fyodor performs. He jokes, provokes, invents a story about Diderot, confesses that he has just invented it, kneels theatrically and asks what he must do to gain eternal life. Zosima answers the man before him, not humanity in the abstract. Fyodor Pavlovich even explains his own buffoonery. He expects others to despise him, and he is ashamed. So he makes himself ridiculous before anyone else can do it properly. If humiliation is inevitable, he will direct the scene, choose the costume, and deliver the first insult. By degrading himself loudly, he gains a strange advantage over every possible judge. Their contempt can no longer surprise him. It merely follows his script. And because he has announced that everyone is worse than he is, apparent self-abasement secretly restores his superiority. He loses dignity in public to protect vanity in private. This is why a noisy confession can conceal more than silence. A person may declare himself wicked, hopeless, impossible, and thereby prevent anyone from naming the particular injury he caused. General self-condemnation is dramatic but vague. It asks for reassurance, laughter, or shocked attention. Remorse is quieter and more exact. It says, "I did this. It harmed you. I had choices. I owe repair." Fyodor's performance circles the truth while making contact with it impossible. He exposes everything except what would obligate him to change. Shamelessness becomes armor worn by someone who is painfully governed by shame. Self-respect is therefore not the same as vanity. Vanity depends upon controlling the image reflected in other minds. It rises with applause and collapses under contradiction. Self-respect can survive an unflattering fact because it rests upon the capacity to answer for what one has done. Nor is remorse the same as destructive shame. Remorse judges an action and can lead toward restitution. Destructive shame declares the whole self contemptible, then seeks escape through denial, aggression, exhibition, or contempt for others. If I am nothing but filth, a wabik, why apologize for one injury? If everyone already condemns me, why not punish them first? An honest mistake has a different moral structure. We all misremember, misunderstand, and draw false conclusions from incomplete evidence. Error becomes self-deception when desire repeatedly receives privileges that evidence does not. The mistaken person may resist correction, but can eventually say, "I was wrong," without feeling that existence itself has been annulled. The self-deceiver protects not merely a proposition, but a need attached to it. He asks one standard of proof for what comforts him, and another for what threatens him. His reasoning has a destination before his inquiry has begun. This helps resolve the old paradox. How can the deceiver and the deceived be the same person? We need not imagine someone consciously holding two explicit convictions at the same instant. Knowing the truth perfectly, while also believing its opposite perfectly. The mind has gentler methods. It can look away from one fact and stare at another. It can preserve the flattering part of a memory and let the humiliating sequence fade. It can rename control as concern, cowardice as prudence, and retaliation as justice. It can abandon a thought one step before its conclusion, because the emotional cost of finishing it has already been sensed. Dostoevsky's most precise phrase is not simply lies to himself, but listens to his own lie. Invention is only the beginning. Listening gives the invention duration. Each rehearsal makes the chosen version easier to retrieve. Familiarity begins to feel like accuracy. A preferred interpretation hardens into apparent memory. The memory becomes a story about character. I am always betrayed, always generous, always the one who carries others. Then the story becomes a moral system. Whoever confirms it is loyal. Whoever questions it is cruel. Conscience has not vanished. Its voice has been imitated so faithfully that the imitation now issues commands. This new authority also changes language itself. Words once used to test reality become tools for preventing a test. Always erases exceptions, never makes dialogue pointless, obviously conceals the absence of proof. The story begins to anticipate objections and include them as evidence. If a friend agrees, he confirms it. If he hesitates, his hesitation reveals betrayal. If he refuses to judge, neutrality proves cowardice. A belief organized in this way cannot be corrected from within, because it has assigned every possible response a place before the response occurs. The lie no longer answers to experience. Experience must answer to the lie. The chain in Zosima's warning follows with severe logic. Once evidence is admitted according to emotional convenience, the distinction between truth within and truth around us begins to fail. We become uncertain about our own motives because we have renamed them too often. We become uncertain about others because we interpret them through roles assigned by our defense. Self-respect then erodes, even when self-esteem appears loud and healthy. Somewhere beneath the performance, we know that our innocence depends upon not looking. The resulting uneasiness demands further applause, further victory, further proof. Respect for others fails at the same time. To respect another person is to grant that his experience may contain facts not authorized by our story. He may have been wounded when we meant to be admired. He may leave, although we believe our need should bind him. He may disagree without hating us, but the protected fiction cannot tolerate such independence. Other people become supporting characters whose moral value depends upon whether they preserve our account. We cease meeting them as realities. We use them as witnesses for the defense, defendants in an endless trial, or mirrors instructed to return a merciful image. Then reality itself begins to feel offensive. Dostoevsky immediately observes that the person who lies to himself becomes exceptionally easy to insult. The reason is not mysterious. When identity rests on a protected fiction, contradiction is experienced not as information, but as attack. A neutral hesitation becomes rejection. A request for accountability becomes persecution. The self-deceiver catches at a phrase, enlarges it, adds a hostile tone, and revisits it until resentment feels earned. Grievance restores innocence. It also grants importance. If others are conspiring against me, then I occupy the center of their attention. There can even be pleasure in the injury. Resentment allows a person to suffer and dominate at once. He can rehearse the offense, improve its dramatic details, condemn the offender, and enjoy the moral altitude from which condemnation is delivered. Because the wound licenses retaliation, he need not examine the desires concealed inside his response. Nietzsche's account of resentment approaches this transformation from another direction. He describes thwarted power becoming creative in an imaginary revenge, turning incapacity into moral accusation. Dostoevsky also sees wounded pride manufacturing virtue from grievance. But Nietzsche's genealogy and Zosima's Christian diagnosis do not promise the same redemption. Zosima answers resentment with repentance, responsibility, and active love before God. Intelligence offers no immunity. It may simply provide a more accomplished advocate for desire. Imagine a clever man confronted with evidence that his business decision harmed others. At first, he says the damage never occurred. When records establish it, he says it was insignificant. When its scale becomes undeniable, he claims it was unavoidable. When alternatives are shown, he attacks the motives of the person presenting them. If the critic is emotional, emotion proves unreliability. If calmness proves cold hostility. Every possible response has been converted into evidence for the conclusion he needed before the conversation began. This reasoning moves in circles while pretending to advance. The absence of evidence becomes proof that the conspiracy is well concealed. A source once praised becomes corrupt the moment it contradicts him. Standards of proof rise and fall with convenience. He remembers every prediction that succeeded and explains away each one that failed. None of these maneuvers requires a secret meeting at which the mind decides to become dishonest. They can occur through a succession of tiny permissions. Yet responsibility remains, because he repeatedly refuses the occasions on which his account could be tested. Modern psychology describes parts of this process without exhausting Dostoevsky's moral insight. Cognitive dissonance names the discomfort produced when conduct conflicts with belief or self-image. One way to reduce that discomfort is to change the conduct. Another is to revise its meaning. Motivated reasoning shows how desire can influence which arguments we retrieve and how strictly we examine them. Confirmation bias favors evidence that supports an existing conclusion. Research on reconstructive memory warns that remembering is not the playback of a fixed recording. Each retelling can incorporate later language, emphasis, and suggestion. Repetition may increase confidence without increasing truth. Freud's account of repression adds another distinction. Some disturbing wishes or experiences are kept from conscious recognition. The psychoanalytic tradition also studies rationalization, in which a respectable explanation is supplied for conduct driven by less acceptable motives. Dostoevsky's self-deceiver may use both concealment and explanation, but his focus is ethical and relational. The decisive question is not only what mental mechanism produced the false belief, it is what the person does when truth approaches. Does he become curious, frightened, evasive, vindictive? Psychology can explain the defense. Zosima asks whether the defended person can still respect and love. Kierkegaard understood despair as a disorder in the self's relation to itself, ultimately a relation lived before God. A person can flee what he is, or desperately insist upon being a self of his own invention. Sartre's bad faith removes that theological horizon, but preserves the drama of evasion. We deny our freedom by pretending we are fixed objects, or deny the facts of our situation by imagining ourselves pure possibility. These views do not simply collapse into Zosima's warning, yet each recognizes that selfhood can be corrupted not only by ignorance, but by the manner in which we refuse responsibility for what we already partly apprehend. Dostoevsky tests this refusal in fiction, where an argument must live inside a body and injure another person. The underground man turns humiliation into a claim of superiority. He is more conscious, he believes, than ordinary people. Therefore, his paralysis proves refinement. He treasures old insults, adding details through imagination, because resentment gives form to an otherwise powerless life. When Liza approaches him with compassion, he cannot receive her as an equal reality. Her generosity exposes the distance between the noble role he performed and the motives beneath it. He responds by humiliating her. For him, love has become indistinguishable from mastery. Raskolnikov, in Crime and Punishment, builds a more imposing defense. His theory divides humanity into ordinary people and exceptional figures who may cross moral boundaries for a higher purpose. The theory contains intellectual questions, but it also disguises pride, desperation, rage, and the desire to discover whether he belongs among those permitted to transgress. After the murder, abstraction cannot absorb the stubborn reality of what has happened. The stolen objects scarcely matter. His theory was not merely a cause of the crime, it was a language designed to keep certain motives from being named. His intelligence constructed a courtroom in which longing served as evidence. This is why, having no respect he ceases to love, is the emotional center of Zosima's warning. Love requires more than intensity. It requires consent to the other person's existence beyond our need. Someone who cannot bear truth must continually recruit others into the work of concealment. The beloved must reassure, admire, forgive on schedule, and avoid facts that disturb the protected identity. When she speaks from her own experience, she becomes disloyal. When she sets a boundary, she becomes cruel. What is called love may remain passionate, even sacrificial, while never allowing the beloved to be free. Romantic obsession often reveals this counterfeit. A man says he loves a woman, but loves chiefly the future she symbolizes, the status her affection confers, or the rescue from loneliness he has assigned her. Jealousy calls itself devotion because admitting possession would be ugly. Surveillance calls itself protection. Dependence calls itself destiny. If she changes, disappoints him, or simply proves more complicated than his image, he feels betrayed by the very existence of her reality. He did not love a person who could surprise him. He loved an agreement she never knowingly signed. The same corruption appears outside romance. A parent may call control care, a friend may call envy concern, and a moral crusader may call appetite for punishment, compassion for victims. The problem is not that motives are ever pure. Human affection is mixed with need, fear, vanity, and memory. Love becomes possible when those mixtures can be admitted without making the other person pay for them. Respect says, "My feeling is real, but it is not sovereign. Your life is not raw material for my self-explanation." Zosima speaks as Dostoevsky's fictional Russian Orthodox elder. Truthful self-examination, humility, confession, responsibility, and active love are not interchangeable forms of generic spirituality. They concern a person standing before God, unable to obtain innocence by transferring guilt to a neighbor. Humility here is not humiliation and not hatred of the self. It is release from the exhausting need to appear innocent. Confession is not public exhibitionism, compulsive disclosure, or a performance of brokenness. It names the truth so that communion, repair, and transformation become possible. Active love is the opposite of loving humanity in imagination, while finding actual persons unbearable. It takes form in attention, patience, apology, service, and the refusal to make another carry what belongs to us. This does not erase judgment. Forgiveness does not require calling cruelty harmless, and responsibility does not forbid boundaries. Zosima's religious vision is demanding precisely because it joins mercy to truth. Mercy without truth becomes permission. Truth without mercy can become another instrument of vanity, a way to enjoy being the one who sees through everyone else. A late self-portrait by Rembrandt offers a quiet visual analogy. The aging face is not smoothed into triumph, yet neither is it presented as an object of contempt. Weariness, dignity, vulnerability, and the residue of performance remain together. Such honesty does not solve the self like a puzzle. It permits contradiction to be visible without forcing it into an idealized mask. Self-recognition may begin in this way, not with the fantasy of seeing ourselves perfectly, but with the willingness to stop erasing every feature that disturbs the portrait. Our age has refined the instruments of erasure. A curated identity on social media is not automatically false. Selection is unavoidable in any form of presentation. The danger begins when the presented self becomes a creditor to whom daily life must pay tribute. A person photographs affection while intimacy is dying, displays discipline while work has become compulsion, and posts certainty while privately disoriented. Eventually, he may protect the public image from the people who know him. Their honest concern threatens not only his mood, but an identity built before an audience. The performance survives by making witnesses feel guilty for seeing. Consider also someone who remains in a destructive relationship for years. The first recognition is painful. This bond is harming me. But another truth follows close behind. I defended it, sacrificed for it, dismissed warnings, and built part of my identity around having chosen wisely. To leave now seems to declare those years meaningless. So each new wound is renamed a difficult season. Each apology is treated as transformation, and each recurrence is explained as exceptional. The lie protects the past by mortgaging the future. Admitting reality would hurt once with terrible clarity. Refusing it distributes the pain across the years. Or consider the ideologue whose community supplies belonging, moral importance, and a complete account of suffering. Contradictory evidence cannot remain merely evidence, because the belief now holds friendships, status, and innocence together. A failed prediction proves sabotage. An exposed leader becomes the victim of enemies. Anyone who leaves was never sincere. Intelligence is recruited to seal every exit. The person may believe he is defending truth when he is defending the social world that would collapse if truth were allowed to arrive without permission. None of this licenses cruelty toward those whose defenses were formed under overwhelming conditions. Trauma, mental illness, psychosis, involuntary disturbances of memory, and survival responses are not simple dishonesty. Sometimes, a truth was once too dangerous for a child or terrified mind to bear. Understanding this should deepen compassion. It should also sharpen distinctions. To explain how a defense arose is not to declare every later harm innocent. A wound may reduce freedom without abolishing responsibility. Compassion asks what happened to you. Justice must still ask what happened through you to others. Honesty with oneself is not endless rumination. It is not self-punishment, brutal disclosure, or the narcissism of monitoring every inner movement. Nor does it require telling every private thought, since discretion can protect dignity and love. Feelings themselves are not verdicts. Fear does not prove danger. Jealousy does not prove betrayal. Guilt does not always prove guilt. Inner honesty means submitting our favored story to questions we would consider fair if the story belonged to someone else. It means allowing evidence to revise memory and allowing another person's testimony to exist beside our intention. The practice is often undramatic. Ask what detail you keep omitting when you retell the quarrel. Notice whether your explanation changes each time an objection is answered. Separate what you know from what you need to be true. Admit mixed motives without using mixture as an excuse. Generosity can contain vanity and still become more generous once vanity is recognized. Apologize without quietly rewriting the offense inside the apology. Say, "I did this," before saying what they did. Such acts do not guarantee innocence. They restore the possibility of respect. The first reward may not be peace. A long-defended truth often arrives with grief. Lost years, wounded people, a smaller image of oneself. But sorrow is not the same as collapse. Remorse can move. It can return, repair, accept limits, and learn. The self built on innocence is fragile because every fact threatens it. The self capable of responsibility can remain standing after confession. This is the strange mercy hidden inside Zosima's severity. We do not recover dignity by proving we were never guilty. We recover it by becoming someone who no longer needs guilt to belong entirely to another person. After the argument, the quiet room remains. The old version is ready, polished by repetition, generous to pride and merciless to everyone else. Another account is less fluent. It includes the sentence you omitted, the pleasure you took in wounding, the fear beneath your certainty, and the possibility that the other person is not your enemy. No alibi remains. At first, this account may sound foreign and hostile. That is how far listening can carry a lie. Not merely until falsehood resembles conscience, but until conscience, returning in its unpracticed voice, is mistaken for an accusation from outside, and truth itself is heard as the enemy at the door.